Good morning. My name is Kyle. This is Auditing with Autism, where I put a camera on my shoulder and walk in the world and show everybody what I experience as I have autism interacting with people in the world. I have my first video I'm going to post today that has the video camera on the shoulder. It happened when I went to my local library recently, and I found out that I was having a communication breakdown and trouble with the librarian, and it was so serious that she felt for some reason that she was going to pick up the phone and trespass me, call the police, and trespass me out of the library. It was starting to happen that way. And when I realized that it was that serious, then so I then pulled out my phone and started to record, because what I was doing was I came into the library to check out some books, as I often do. But last September, 5 or 6 months ago, I had an experience there where earlier in the day, at home, I had destroyed my phone accidentally, completely ruined it, can't turn it on or anything. And so as a person with autism, as we do sometimes, do you ever see yourself doing this? I found a solution to fix the phone, and that was my track. And I didn't deviate from that track when deviating would have been helpful in my situation. For example, as soon as I broke my phone, I thought, why don't I go to the library and make a phone call to the phone store, and I will, inquire about making another purchase to get another phone. And I did that track instead of the thinking of the track of why don't I just go up to the clubhouse here? I live in a little community, or this music shack is located in a community. We have a clubhouse. They have a phone. Why didn't I just think about that? Go up there and use the services that I've probably already paid for. But the reason I didn't is because of my positive experiences at my local library throughout my childhood and my adult life. It's been so good that the first place that I thought to go was the library. I knew I could get help there. And, I had already met the librarian and made a rapport with her. So I thought maybe that would be enough to ask to use the phone at the library. I discovered later that many libraries offer the phones. There's a library, the next library close to us, excuse me, has a phone, and this library is within 20 miles of the first one that I'm referring to. And then in Seattle, they all offer phones for everybody. Whether you're just, homeless, using the phone too much, it's there for you. I didn't know that at this day. So anyway, I went to the library and I asked to use the phone. I approached the library assistant, not the librarian manager at first, a different person than I had a rapport with. This was a young man who looked a lot like me when I was his age, beard, long hair, ponytail. And I approached him with this idea that I'm excited for him because I'm going to give him an opportunity to help me. I actually said it that way. I said, this is a way for you to get good karma, and this is going to be really great because it's so easy. All you have to do is let me use the phone and give me a helping hand. And he actually said no. And okay. So the policy of the library is not to let people use the phone, he said. So I, foolishly or not, I don't know why, but I asked him, well, maybe would you mind if I just use your cell phone? It's going to be a business call, and it's going to take 3 minutes. And it's an emergency almost. I don't have a phone, which does feel weird. I grew up not having a cell phone, and then after having one for 20 years, it does feel strange to not have that access. And access to emergency services, too. I was feeling kind of all of the anxiety of not having your phone. And well, anyway, he denied me also the request to use his personal phone. By this time, though, Annie is her name, and she came out and started talking to me. And so I asked her, I was hoping to talk with her because I had already met her, like I said, had a rapport, I thought, with her. And she told me why they weren't allowed to let people use the phone. And I explained my position, with a broken phone. And to make a long story short, I was denied. And that's fine. Okay. So I left, and got my books checked out, left. I wasn't mad or anything like that. I drove straight to the library store, bought the phone, and everything's been great so far. And I basically forgot about it, Well, fast forward 4 or 5 months later, I go to the library, and I realize they hired a third person. And this is where I started to have some trouble, because I could have ignored it, but instead I wanted to learn something. What I was trying to learn was that, well, the new person they hired looked identical to the other guy. He had a beard, he had a long red-haired ponytail, same height, and I was having trouble, since I hadn't seen the other guy for 4 or 5 months, and I'd only met him once. I didn't know who it was that I spoke to 4 or 5 months ago. And I wanted to know who it was that, said no to me, so that I could think of the person in the correct way. I didn't want to make any wrong judgments. It seems pretty basic and sincere. Well, it didn't go over well. I ended up asking his name. I asked the library, I won't say his name, but I asked his name. I asked the guy that I'd talked to 4 or 5 months ago if he was the guy that I had talked to and asked to use his phone and the library phone. And he said, yeah, that was me. I remember that. And so I told him the reason I wanted to know if it was him was because they had hired this new guy, and I didn't want to make any judgments against the new guy for not helping me. And then after I said that, which is honest and sincere and without negative judgment, just the truth, he looked at me, the man I said that to, who had helped me before, or didn't help me before. I'd talked to him before. Anyway, I looked at him after I said that, and he had a different expression on his face than the one he had had seconds ago. And I couldn't understand what the difference was and why, it had changed. It looked like maybe he was mad. And so I asked him straight out, again, a mistake. People don't do this in the neurotypical world, I think. But I sure do. And if I want to know if you're happy or sad, I might just go ahead and ask you. Well, I asked him, are you mad? Your face looks different. Did I just upset you? And he got more mad looking on his face, and because I had asked that, I suppose. And fortunately, Annie was approaching from behind. I didn't see her. She had overheard the whole thing and intervened before the man that I was speaking to, reacted in any way that wouldn't have been good, I think, because I think he was mad. And I think he was mad because of how Annie reacted. She also approached me with some animosity and very curt, behavior. And so I had gone to the library that day to talk about, to check out some books, and to also talk about that experience that I had a few months ago. And I was just telling her about why I was asking her coworker if his face was mad, because I was trying to make the right judgment. I'll put a picture in here so you can see. Oh, maybe I won't. I don't know. Maybe I'll just cover their faces so you can see how identical they looked, So she was being curt and didn't really want to talk to me about me being denied phone services for 4 or 5 months ago. And I was in the moment coming up with ideas and suggestions on how it could be helpful to have a phone there in a case-by-case basis. after I had asked her to tell me why they had that policy, and she told me that people in the community would come and abuse the phone, you know, and use it too much, I guess. And, you know, I'm sure it was for all the right reasons, but I had some thoughts, you know, maybe on a case-by-case basis, or ultimately my question is, if there's no payphones in this community and somebody does break their phone, what do you suggest? I asked her. You know, how does a person go about making a phone call? There's no payphones. And if people aren't going to let you use their phone, then what do you do? Well, this conversation itself was the problem. My communication breakdown was not recognizing how other people were feeling. She was getting upset that I was talking to her about what happened before, you know, and how I thought they could improve services by, you know, using a phone occasionally or a case-by-case basis, or other ideas like that. And also not being able to read her coworker's face. And I think I upset him by asking him how he was feeling. So, you know, it surprised me. She was clearly feeling hurt, animosity, mad, because I was talking about the past and ideas. All of a sudden, she picked up the phone and threatened to call the police and trespass me, which I didn't understand until later would actually means that if you are, you know, if the police are called, then you're automatically trespassed from all libraries in the area, hundreds of libraries, for a year. That's a pretty major hit for anybody, especially if you're a learner. And so this was quite a threat. And I didn't understand why she was threatening me. I was talking to her. I was just like I'm talking to you now. You know, I wasn't yelling or raising my voice at all. I didn't have any sarcasm or snarky remarks in that moment at all. Because usually when I'm doing sarcasm or snark, I'm actually trying to be funny and you know, but it hardly comes across the way I'd like it to if I'm trying to be funny. So I wasn't trying to be funny because I didn't want to make any mistakes. And so it took me 12.5 minutes to explain to you here that what I'm going to post are a couple videos of my experience. I'm talking to a librarian. She's telling me about the policies. She's going to be saying on the film that the reason she picked up the phone was because I wasn't following the policies. And I asked, well, what policies did I break? And she said, I wasn't doing, the actual technical term is, I wasn't complying with the directions from staff. Complying with the directions from staff, I thought would be a policy violation. You know, it's not a law. Policies of a library are not the law. And I think, you know, I know that libraries are a public space, similar to parks, but there's a time, use, and manner, just like in parks, but for sure with libraries. But they're a public space, and you can't, it's not against the law to use your First Amendment freedom of speech to speak in a library. And she was essentially telling me not to speak about that conversation about when I came in and got denied use of the phone. And I was trying to talk to her about that and give her ideas. And she didn't want to have that conversation at all. And so much so that she was telling me to basically shut up, and if you don't, I'm calling the cops. She picked up the phone and threatened to trespass me. So I, of course, you know, I'm not going to push back in that sense. I want to learn about what's going on. And so I sort of, what do they call it, de-escalated the situation and got us to be calm again and backed into the idea of checking out books when I was able to finally talk to her again about what happened there. You know, well, how could it be that you could trespass somebody from a library for not breaking the law? And she said, oh yeah, we can do that. That's what we can do. And I'm like, you know, I'm thinking what I know about civil rights is that, no, you can't call cops to come arrest somebody if they're not breaking the law. And she says, yeah, no, Yeah, if we ask somebody to leave the library and they don't comply with the directions, it's a policy violation, and that, gives us the right to call the cops. And I'm like, no, policies and cops, law and policies, this isn't going to play out very good for the library and for the cops if they come and arrest people violently. Whenever you're arrested, it's it's an act of violence for sure. And so you can't just put violence on people for not breaking the law. That's not the way the civil rights work. And she's like, yeah, we can. So I'm like, well, okay, I'm going to go home and have to learn about this. And so I did. I went home and learned all about it. And would you believe it? They actually did make a law. This is another, I don't really smoke. I do put tobacco in there so I can taste it because I like the flavor of the air. But I've never been a smoker. This is just a stimming technique. I call it my breathing stick because I usually wear this when I'm walking. And it reminds me to keep my mouth closed, breathe through the nose. And it's great. I don't know. I've had people compliment me on how it looks. Like, oh, pipe looks good. But I'm never going to light it up. I don't smoke. But I definitely like keeping it in my mouth. And it helps me a lot. I saw in another video I made in the library, I was clicking my pen like a maniac as my stimming technique. And I didn't know I was doing it the whole time I was in the library. And everybody around here is so nice. I live in the nicest community. People here are so great. Just like in White Salmon. Nobody said anything, nobody even gave me a weird look. And I'm just clicking this old pen. Click, 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 click. It was maybe close to the camera and I could hear all the noise. But it's really obvious I was using that for stimming. So, what they did in 1935, 89 years ago, the state of Washington created a law that made it legal for librarians to kick people out of the library if they break policies. So it's in the books as a law, for sure. And so that means she was right. I would technically be breaking the law if I didn't follow her directions. Well, this fascinated me because I'm thinking to myself, what kind of a law can you make that would violate civil rights? This is a pretty interesting law. Well, this 89-year-old law is called the Revised Code of Washington, or otherwise known as RCW. The number is 27.12.290. 27.12.290 is a law which has as its title, violators may be excluded. That's actually what it says as its title. Violators may be excluded. And it's primarily used for the purpose of the local libraries and other Washington State Library districts' culture. It's a law for the library culture. It makes sense. But it specifically states that a library may exclude any person who's, and this is different than what happened to me, but it also says it can exclude any person whose physical condition is deemed with due or undue discretion offensive by the library official to other patrons. So basically, if a patron says, I don't like how that guy looks, and the librarian agrees, you can be legally kicked out of a public space just by how you look. Well, I used to work with the handicapped, the disabled, and the mentally disabled as well. Being in a capital city in Oregon and Salem, I was close to a lot of the state services. And I love my brothers and sisters that are disabled. And so I was immediately triggered by that. I thought to myself, the American Disabilities Amendment, the ADA, there's a possible ADA violation. Is that an American Disabilities Association or amendment? I think it's a rule. But it could be a possible ADA violation you know, if they tried to kick somebody out just because of how they looked. Now, I know that they aren't doing that. They're using that law to be used discreetly if, you know, if somebody comes in and they are covered in feces, let's say, or they just have that smell about them that is like that, you know, or they're trying to be that way on purpose or something, you know, that would give the librarian the legal right to get them out of there. But it's ambiguous. So if you were dealing with the wrong librarian and they didn't like how your hair was parted that day, they could legally kick you out, which is not cool. So, but what happened to me was that it goes on to say, this law, this RCW 27.12.290, it says that the library may also exclude anyone who willfully and persistently violates any rule or regulation. And it's to this point that I was making issue. You know, the library has on notice also a handbill in their website that's called the Behavior Expectations. They expect us to, you know, be courteous, be quiet, the basic things that you would expect in a library. And one of the things that it says specifically on that handbill is to comply with the directions of staff. And if you don't, you're breaking this RCW law. Well, that begs a question. I immediately thought, well, you know, what if the librarian is asking or directing you, legally speaking, to the library? What if the librarian is directing you to break the law? Is it against the law to say no to the librarian and then she kicks you out because you're not willing to comply? That's a weird situation. I don't know any librarian that would ever do that. But this law allows for that ambiguity. Another ambiguity would be in a situation, what if the librarian says, I only want you to talk about this religion or this politic type, or, you know, you can only talk about this subject only. Any other topic, you're kicked out of here. Well, this law, this 89-year-old law, actually allows the librarian to do that. So in my situation specifically, it's a third question that I beg. It's a third aspect of that. The librarian didn't ask me to break the law. She didn't ask me to talk only about one subject. What she did was she was asking me, getting me, forcing me, legally making me not talk about any subject. She was actually trying to squash my First Amendment rights of freedom of speech. You know, you have the right to be in a public space and speak as long as you're not harassing people, talking loudly, breaking the law. And of course, in the handbill, it says specifically, as I point out later in the letter, that the very thing the handbill expectations says that one of the things you can do is to share ideas that would benefit the library. And that's, you know, I purport that's what I was doing. I was specifically talking to her about that when she picked up the phone and threatened to call the police. Oh my gosh. Well, you'll see on the video. The videos are only a couple minutes long, so it'll make up for this kind of a long intro to that. But I can't believe that there's an actual law on the books that allows a librarian to break the First Amendment, you know, the rights of our civil rights, you know, the Bill of Rights. It's not logical, nor meritable, nor legal. As far as that goes, SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, I learned, weighs in by saying, quote, restrictions need be reasonable and not an effort to suppress expression merely because public officials oppose the speaker's view. So, yeah, that's sort of what I felt like was happening. She opposed my view for sure. And she told me that I had to stop speaking about that view. And she used the law, RCW 27.12.290, to force me to stop speaking about my view and my ideas. Excuse me. And I don't think that's right. I don't think that a librarian has the right to do that. I discussed with her on the video, as you'll see, that she clearly agrees that you can have the right to come in and film. You know, you can film in the library, she said, and use your First Amendment rights that way. So, but freedom of speech in a way that she didn't like the conversation, no go. You're out of here. You're kicked out for a year. She didn't even tell me that before the threat. So I wrote this letter. I sent it, you know, to the library services. I gave it to the local librarians. I tried to let them know that there's a lot of people that are willing to sue these days, and I don't want to see my local library get sued. You know, it's not worth it. The ambiguity of the law is going to get them in trouble if they're not careful. And I mean, besides, no matter what you think, I really do like my library and librarian people. And I care about them, actually. The more I watch the video, the more I feel that way. I can see that we're just people, you know, trying to live every day. Let me read, well, the last paragraph or a couple sentences here. It's because it talks a little bit about how I feel, and then I'll stop. The library holds a sacred place in society as a locus for the receipt of information, you know, a place where all are equal to gain knowledge, and library staff has our trust, and using this trust capriciously will cost our system of learning dearly. This is not a time to kick people out for speaking their mind on ideas to benefit library services and facilities. Indeed, this is what the Behavior Expectation Handbill allows for. And so that's what this is all about. I don't want anybody to get in trouble. I don't want to pay more in taxes for my library. I don't want to, I don't want anybody to get in trouble, and I do love everybody. So, you know, the phone thing really isn't that important. I was more saddened that they weren't willing to help and improve their karma than I was about the hassle I had with getting a phone that day, which wasn't really that bad. But when I realized there was actually a law, you know, on the books, a 90-year-old law, this is the troubling thing. This law is antiquated, and it can get people like libraries in trouble if they use it ambiguously, you know, if they don't use it correctly. And she was on the verge of doing it that way with me. And, you know, I'm not going to go around suing anybody, but I certainly can. I'm capable of it. And I don't want to push anybody, and I don't want to be pushed either. And I think we should probably just all get along and love each other a little bit. So anyway, I finally made this to say all that and to let you know that I'm posting the other 2 or 3 videos that talk about, well, what happened. I probably won't give much in the description in these next 2 videos because I'm giving it all in this video. Maybe I'll just say in the description to come watch this video. But hey, you know what happened last night? It snowed. The snow gods came and gave us about a ½ inch of snow. I don't know if you can see it back there, but whew, woke up to some fresh, wet snow, and it was kind of exciting and cold and crisp. Well, I hope you all have a crisp day yourself. Crunchy granola sweet, you know. Love you guys. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Please like and subscribe, by the way, and watch these other videos. You know, it's a nice little conversation in civil rights. It really is. Bye-bye.